Hello YouTube and onwards patrons, and welcome back to another video. I hope you're all well. I hope you're surviving the heat if you're in a summer country, or staying warm in the winter if you're in Australia. I've heard the Melbourne winter's been quite cold this year. Today, well, some of you might be slightly confused because, okay, I already did a Gitz faction review on Onwards, okay? But I've played the most games with any other faction with Gitz, in this kind of Wild West start of Age of Sigmar 4. I probably played like between 30 to 40 games of Gitz now, which, okay, yes, that's a lot. I play too much Warhammer, yes, okay. But I figure I have some insights now. So this is going to be another edition of the Stuart When the Dust Settles thing. So for those who are not familiar with the series, which I used to do a lot, but only do occasionally now, because the game changes so fast, it's hard to sort of create a, okay, the book came out, what's the real strength? I'm not going to do this for every faction that I did an initial reaction on, but Gitz, I just play so much, and it's my favorite faction by far, both in terms of the models, and then also the rules I just always like. Gitz is great. So I'm going to kind of go through the faction abilities in brief, because obviously we did them in the other video. For those on YouTube who are watching who haven't seen the other video, you can go and check out the Onwards Patreon, and it will be some time in the past, but you can kind of scroll down and find it. And in that video, I sort of gave my initial impressions of the book, but this one, yeah, will be a bit more conclusive about what I think are the strong units, what's average, what kind of tech is there in here, because there's a lot of tech. And then also at the end, we're going to go through the manifestations, okay? Because that's a big part of building this army, is choosing which manifestation law, because almost all of them are good with Gitz. So it's knowing which buttons to push when in terms of list building, right? Okay, so let's get into it. So the battle traits, I'll just zoom in a bit. It's kind of uneven. So it's the moon thing again, right? But my experience playing now is that it's the benefits are very uneven. And what I mean by that is there's certain game states where it does nothing, and there's certain units that absolutely need to be under the moon. Okay, so for non-squig moon clan stuff, you get 3 to control score, which is not always useful until you absolutely need it. So this one is interesting. If you're in a winning state and you're standing on objectives, it's not very useful. But if you're in a losing spot and you need to kind of go in and claim objectives, this feels super strong. Particularly if you're a little bit MSU, and there's one unit in particular here that leans into that. But even just having, like, for example, one stabber alive, that's going to be, if it's the banner, right? It's going to be 5 models, right? The squigs, okay, rerolling the random move is terrible. It's just awful. I mean, it does basically nothing. So the squigs don't really matter. Trogs, +1 save. Okay, so the Trogs absolutely need to be under the moon at all times. That is the Trog situation. If they're not under the moon, they start dying much faster. So Trogs need to be under the moon. And Spiderfang, well, they suck. But hypothetically, if they didn't suck, they need to be under the moon. But they suck. So there's a couple Spiderfang units that I think are decent. But I don't think the regular Spiderfang riders are good. And this is probably what it's most relevant for. So, yeah, we can kind of ignore that. Okay. Now, given that this is the case, how important is controlling the moon? I'd say not that important. I mean, if you run Trogs, it's nice to have some access to controlling the moon, and the 2 ways of basically doing that are Scragrott and the Endless Spell. But otherwise, the Trogs kind of play in a way where you need to defend your shrine. The non-squig moon clan stuff doesn't really need to be under the moon in an absolutely desperate way. It's just sort of like a nice bonus, I'd say. So, okay, so where do we start the moon then? I always start and just decide where you're going to have the most units, okay? And then you kind of, I use the shrine usually to extend that range to the other quarter of the board. So you put it in like the left quarter, and then you use the shrine to extend the range out to the right a little bit. Not too far, okay, because you want to be able to defend your shrine, because if it dies, it sucks. But, well, it's actually not too bad when the shrine dies, which I'll explain in a second. But you want to just extend the range a little bit. So I would never, like, like F up your deployment by sticking the shrine at the front of your lines and kind of disrupting your battle lines. You don't want to do that, but just use it as a little bit of an extension, okay? Because the shrine will put out a 12-inch aura of this Moon Clan aura. So with Trogs, you really might want to think about putting your shrine a bit forward. Unfortunately, the terrain maps in this edition don't usually allow for that. So you often end up in a situation with the Trogs where you need to kind of camp in your quarter until the moon starts moving. And when it starts moving, you really hope that it stays in the middle, because if it moves off, then the army's a lot worse. Okay, battle formations. Of these four, one is way better than the other three, and that is Moon Clan Scrap. This is insane. Okay, now this is duplicated in like 6 factions, okay? And I think in all of them it's insane. But I don't know if the other factions have access to some of the units we do, where they're durable enough to run MSU and still be really strong. So basically, you pile in with 3 units, and then you can actually pick the same enemy unit 3 times, because the units that you pick for this ability are your own units, so you can pick the same enemy unit 3 times and do mortals on a 2+ with that. So that's just free damage, and importantly, it's at the end of the turn. So this can be very expertly used to tag your opponent's units in a way where they're not going to be able to respond, because it's the end of the turn. Okay, now when I get to Gobbapalooza, we'll talk about kind of more about why this is an insane ability, but that's a really strong ability. The other abilities, okay, Squigalanche I think is quite good as well. +1 attack for your squig dudes when they charge. Solid. Troggoth is really mid. You get D3 heal when your Trogs fight, but they heal anyway at the start of both players' turns, so nice on your Trug and your Dankhold, but regular Trog's not that relevant. And then you'll not take a Skid Strand or Ragnarok. Okay, so just ignore that. Until the points go down, we don't even need to read what the other thing does. Okay, heroic traits. Yeah, so I played all 3 of these. And one of them is just way better than the other 2. I've just tried, like, so Clammy Hand and Fight Another Day are fine. Okay, so 3 extra rally rolls, decent. Fight Another Day, 3 up retreat, okay. But Loon Touched is just, like, either if you're not a wizard, you become wizard, insane. And +1 to cast, also insane. So, yeah, I think you'd be happy running Loon Touched in just about every list. When would you run Fight Another Day? When you're running a Mangler Squig, which I think is an okay unit. I think if you're running a Trog, I would still run Loon Touched. Now, if you run a Fungoid Cave Shaman general, okay, so this is, or not a general, but a Fungoid Cave Shaman, that's your only hero that can take a heroic trait, then maybe there's an argument for taking Clammy Hand over Loon Touch, but I probably would still rather have the +1 to cast, personally. And same with the big spider. So I think Loon Touched every time. And then artifacts are all terrible. I'm not really sure where I've gotten to with this. If you don't run any of the big heroes, then just roll a D3. Look, I tend to go the Backstabber's Blade, okay? And the reason is okay, it's terrible, but it can do something once per game. It can have a swing point. I've actually had a few games where it's done something now. A little Loon Boss. The Lyrian Gitz Shield as well, I think is decent. The Clammy Cow I probably wouldn't run on a foot hero, because you're -1 to hit from shooting anyway. So if you're going to run a foot hero, I'd probably run one of the other 2. And then if you're running a hero and a spider or whatever, I'd probably run the Clammy Cow. Or Dankhold, Trogbus, or Mangler Squig, you run the Clammy Cow. Okay? So that's sort of where I'm at with the artifacts and stuff. Okay, the spell lore. I think we have one of the strongest spell lores in the game. Okay? Now, there's a weakness to the spell lore, which is that everything is on a 7. So that is the weakness, which means one of 2 things. You either need bonuses to cast. The only way to get that is through Web Spinner Shaman or Loon Touched in this Web Spinner Shaman or Ragnarok, or Loon Touched. Or you just run more wizards. And because the reason you need to run more wizards, right, is Sticky Distraction is unlimited. So, okay, we could run one wizard with +1 to cast, okay? Or we just run 4 wizards and we just throw dice at it until it goes off, right? And it'll go off, okay? Or you run, Hand of Gork. Okay, this is sometimes an important spell, but yeah, maybe that's what you use your +1 to cast on. And then Spore Maws is actually pretty nice. Just basically does D3 on a 2-up to 3 enemy units within 12. Like, not that many armies have this kind of damage spell, so pretty nice, but again, it's a 7. So, spells, unreliable, but good. Manifestations are great, but we'll get to them later, okay? So, I think that's what we're going to go with in terms of the Allegiance abilities, okay? Alright. Now, let's just shuffle this around a bit. Yeah, we can start with Kragnos. In my Ogres review, I said we're going to get to Kragnos later, and we didn't. So I'm not going to forget this time, so we'll just do it straight up first. Okay, Kragnos. So 4-up save. The damage in combat's ridiculous, okay? It's one of the only units in the game that just does this much damage. Now, he just slaps stuff off, right? You just send him in, and just most of the time, unless you get really unlucky, he's just going to completely rinse something in combat. He has 3-up spell ignore. Has this stupid, goofy monster thing where if you roll a 7, it does nothing. But main thing you're taking him for is 3d6 charge for friendly destruction units wholly within 12. Now, how useful is an army like Gitz? Turns out insanely good. Because everything is so slow in this army now. Even the squig stuff is not fast at all. That this just makes all of your plays so much easier, right? Like your counter charges, you're charging in to go tag stuff, you're charging to go take this objective, you're charging out of a teleport, you're charging out of a bridge, You're charging to block up a little, a little line here, so your opponent's not going to be able to get in a good charge the next turn with your screen. Okay, you just send them in and then tag that bit up, or you go and in with your Trogs, because the Trogs on the go turn they need to make the charge. Okay, otherwise you're going to fail the tactic, lose the objective, and so and so. And Kragnos actually, because you can teleport him, it's never a done deal if you send him in and stuff up that he's going to die, right? So if you send him in, if you charge him in, and then don't kill something, you can power through, okay? Now, if you send him in and you do kill something, you can Hand of Gork. So there's always an out for Kragnos, okay? Now, Hand of Gork, okay, we get -1 to cast when we cast it on our opponent's turn, so not always going to go off, but it's a potential out that your opponent has to think about, right? Which means maybe they're less likely to plan their turn around it, construct their hero phase around it. So Kragnos just makes it so your opponent's plans are less reliable and yours are more reliable. What is his weakness? I haven't really found one yet, to be honest. Okay, the 4-up save 5-up ward means that you can't just send him willy-nilly around the board. But the shooting isn't an issue because he doesn't fly, so you can hide him in a wood. He's actually made quite a bit more tanky by the Heroes Regiment thing, the Honor Guard, where you can basically just follow him around with like 6 Snufflers or something, and then he's just -1 attack in combat, which is massive. I was a bit reluctant to do this, but I just think this in Gitz this is just S tier unit. Okay, I don't think it's broken. It's expensive, right? But I don't think I'm playing Gitz without Kragnos. It's just too slow and too unreliable. This just makes everything so much more reliable. And generally in Warhammer, reliability is king. So anything that makes if I need to go kill a unit for Slay the Entourage, he's just doing it. Like, tennis move, 3d6, potential to get a +1 to charge as well. He's getting in, and when he does get in, the opponent will die. So, Kragnos, awesome. Okay. Okay, Scragrott, less awesome. So, Scragrott is 6 wounds with a 6-up save and a 4-up ward. He is a War Master, which does have some utility, right? Because if you take Kragnos, then maybe you can make Scragrott your general, and that means that Kragnos doesn't get hit by a priority target, but then he also would lose the bodyguard, so I'm less keen on that. Okay, so once per battle, you can choose where the moon goes. Now, importantly with this wording, you have to do it before you roll, okay? Because the declare part of the moon is you say you're going to roll, And yeah, the effect is where you roll actually. So this would be before you do the roll, which makes it quite a bit less good. His spell's nice, but there's a million other good spells he could cast. And then the redeploy thing, it's okay. I just don't think redeploy is that useful in this army. I found it's the command I use the least often, because nothing runs and charges. I think the time when you would use this is probably with a 40 block of shooters, where the idea is you can redeploy around the board and use cover fire, because you're allowed to do that. If they have a fact you can't do that, then okay, I don't really know what the use of this thing is. Kragnos is, Scragrott is 220. Would you ever take him? Maybe, but me personally, not really. The one major piece of utility he has is he can take anything in his regiment, which is the same as Kragnos and the Trog dude, who I don't have here. I'm gonna have to go get that in a second, but let me just do that now. All right, we've got Trog. So we're talking Scragrott. Yeah, I'd probably go like B. Somewhere down here, probably B. I don't really see that much of a place. He's okay. Okay, the Loon Boss. So, an interesting unit. So, 130 points, 5 wounds, 4 up save, 6 up ward. Kind of okay combat, right? 5 attacks, 4s and 4s, ran 1 D3. Maybe okay is a bit of a stretch. Okay, you can chain fight with any Moon Clan infantry. Pretty nice. So, any of your Stabbas shooter guys, your Gobbapaloozas, your Snufflers, or I guess even your Squig herd. I think they're infantry. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Fine. So he gets to hit basically. And in your hero phase, you can give Stabbas either +1 to wound, which is nice, or you return D6 slain models. But you can only do the slain models if they're not in combat, which is obviously a bit weaker. But if you're running a block of Stabbas, you probably would take this guy and just give him Loon Touched, and then you're a wizard and you do another thing, and that's probably your second hero. He can importantly go in a regiment, but I'm not sure that they would. I think most of the time you're probably only going to take, if you're going to go Kragnos, you probably only take one other hero. So I played this guy a lot, and I think is pretty good. I probably would put him in A tier. I mean, if we're gonna put, okay, to be fair, if we're gonna put him there, that's probably a bit high. We'll probably have to do like this then. Yeah, I think that's sort of how I think about it. Maybe, yeah, I'm not really sure on A and B. It's a good war scroll, but it's sort of paired with the Stabbas. I'll probably go B. 130 points is maybe a little bit expensive, would be my overall feedback, but he's priced that way because of Loon Touched, I think. Okay. And then we have this unit. So here's my whole spiel. Gobbapalooza. Alright, so it's 15 wounds. Okay, 6 up save, but that's fake. And control score 2. And in the first battle round, you have 4 up ward, and that decays until the third battle round with into a 6 up ward. Okay. Now, if you said 15 wounds with a 6 up that's a wizard and has another ability for 150 points, that's already good. Okay, but then we have other layers. So the other ability is insane. So you pick a Gitz unit and you give them +1 to run and charge or rend, or if you pick an enemy unit, they can't use commands until the start of your next turn. Which, having played so many games with these units, Mesmerize is so broken. It's so broken. And that's on a 3 up. Okay, so what does that incentivize? It incentivizes running multiple of them, which you will do. Okay, so my experience so far is I think you're probably going to play minimum 3 Gobbapaloozas in most of your lists. I played 8, and it was good. So that tells you how good the unit is. Okay, now the combat is interesting, right? Because it's basically 5 attacks, 4s and 4s, ran 1 D3. But if you give them +1 attack with the spore splatters, it's actually 2 attacks. So it's 10 attacks, 4s and 4s, Ren 1, D3. And they can give themselves +1 Ren, right? So it could be 10 attacks, 4s and 4s, Ren 2, D3 damage, which is actually quite good. And they can pile in at the end of the turn for your Moon Clan scrap as well, importantly, because they're Moon Clan infantry. You can also chain fight them with the Loon Boss, which is funny if you want just like a little bit of a dumb wizard Power Ranger squad. Yeah, and control score 2 is ridiculous because you'd also get +3 to control score with this unit. So you're looking at a unit that's, 4-up ward on the first turn. It's just standing there with a casual 13 control score and an detective that's a wizard. And importantly, because it's a wizard, it can cast manifestations. And because it has a 4-up ward, you can literally just stand it in your opponent's face, okay? So you're just always in a situation with Gobbapalooza where, okay, you just can just chuck shackles in your opponent's face, or you can, cast bridge in a way that just completely stuffs up your opponent's plan, or you can put Purple Sun in an inconvenient spot, or Pendulum in an inconvenient spot. You can always do stuff with Gobbapalooza, right? That's annoying. And when it gets to the mid game and you're all fighting each other in the middle, the no commands thing will legitimately win you some games, okay? You can just have turns where your opponent needs to redeploy something or needs to be able to countercharge with something. A classic play of Gobbapalooza is you see an enemy hammer, okay? You put no commands on, okay? And importantly means that they can't countercharge or redeploy. You charge another unit and then pile it at the end of the turn, and there's nothing they can do about this because they can't redeploy, they can't countercharge, and now they're tagged in combat with Gobbapalooza. And usually if that happens and you have Kragnos in your army, the game is over. Okay? So you have a win condition automatically when you versus, 6 Vanguard. Okay? You play 6 Vanguard, turn off commands, go in, hit charge some other unit, you won't die, and then you just tag the Vanguard, game's over. Okay? And that's with one unit. Okay, so suddenly if you have, 3 to 5 Gobbapaloozas, you always have these random win conditions. Okay, go in, mesmerize this unit, this unit, this unit, go in, tag them all at the end of the turn, game's over. Okay? Now, it's a little bit reliant on having other things to do damage, because of course the damage is not amazing, but if you play against armies that don't have wards, their mortal wounds at the end of the turn, the spells and manifestations, and their combat will often do you enough. I had a game yesterday where I did 15 mortal wounds to a Gargan in combat with 3 Gobbapaloozas, or just 15 wounds. That meant they were bracketed. I could tag another unit. I could do so much with this unit that was just annoying. And it always just takes people way longer than they expect to kill them. Now, I don't want them to nerf Gobbapalooza, but maybe they should, because this unit's broken. I think it's probably the only unit in this army I'd put in that tier, but it's just ridiculous for the points. It's 150 points, right? There's just nothing in the army that's better than that for the points. So, well, actually, there is one unit that you will take once every time that is as good, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, I think insane. Alright, Rabble Rouser. Oh yeah. You're going to have to excuse, because I don't think I have the Rabble Rouser, so we're going to have to use something else here. But, okay, we're going to use this this web spinner dude, okay? That's a Rabble Rouser. I've played this guy a few times. I don't rate it. It's just too awkward. Like, so you deployed and you come out, and then if you follow him around for the rest of the turn, you get run and charge. But you have to move towards him every time. So it's mainly good for squig herd, but I don't know. I really don't think it's good. It'd probably go like C. It's worse than Scragrott though. Okay, maybe we do this. I think that makes sense. Let's do that. Yeah. No, I don't like the Rabble Rouser. Fungal Cave Shaman, I don't really like this one either. Again, it's a thing where, well, you can make the Loon Boss a wizard, and you have Gobbapalooza, so you don't need to spend money on a wizard. So, it's a wizard that once per game could get an extra cast, which could be decent with +1 to cast. But other than that, it's a wizard without a ward that does nothing in combat and dies to anything. So I don't like it at all. I'd probably put it down here. It's better than the Rabble Rouser, but still pretty awful. You'd only take it when you just have 100 points exactly. The Squig Boss. This one's better. Okay, so notably actually okay in combat, and then you can give squigs crit mortals, which is nice, or +3 move, which is also pretty good actually sometimes, and yeah, is cheap enough that he can also just be a cheap wizard, right, with Loon Touch. So again, I probably put him up here with the Loon Boss. Okay, you probably will take him in a bunch of games. Alright, the Loon Boss among the Squigs. I have played this a few times, and I thought it was terrible when I first read the War Scroll. And I'm telling you, it's pretty terrible. Okay, it's pretty terrible, but it's not unplayable. So the damage is horrible. Please don't look at the profile. Please don't look at the 4s and 4s. There's too many 4s here. Okay? There's too many 4s. Once per game, you can give all the squigs +1 to wound. He doesn't need +1 to wound, which is just some random anti-synergy, but for normal squigs, it's decent. Technically it doesn't work at the moment, but let's just assume the +1 to wound works, okay? Because I know it's companion weapons, so it's a bit weird. When he dies, he blows up, which is okay. And when you charge, you do mortal wounds, which is the main ability that makes him okay, alright? Because it means you can charge in, do some mortal wounds, retreat with fight another day, and you've kind of just achieved his purpose. Now, what also you can do, which is interesting, right, is you can charge, and then retreat, and then because you've charged in the same turn, you, I'm pretty sure you can, maybe you can pile in and fight. I'm not sure. Shall we do some Warhammer sleuthing here? So I think the only problem with that is I haven't actually been able to make the play yet, because every time I've sent him in, I haven't rolled the 3 up, which is another problem with him. I want to say you can't, because it depends on the ruling of this thing here. Okay, I'm fairly certain you can't, because the retreat ability is a core ability. Okay, which probably makes them a bit worse in my mind. So you can't retreat and then fight. So you're just retreating when you don't want to fight. Okay. Yeah, it's a beautiful model, but yeah, we know where it's going. Alright. Mangler Squigs, the regular ones, are even worse. So they don't get the charge models, but on a 3 up they can move 3d6. Is that good? No. They do no damage, so I'm not even sure they kill a foot hero. So I don't even have the Mangler Squigs, but they don't even deserve to be on the list. There we go. They can be an F tier. All right, back to the good units. All right, Sneaky Snufflers. So for some reason they have 5 attacks a model that I don't understand. They've just been whiffing the shrooms, which is actually good because often they need to go in and do damage in the mid game, right? Now, the Loon Capturing thing is once per turn armor your hero phase, alright? But what's crazy about it is that they don't need to have like more than one model, and also they can move afterwards, which is like both improvements. So yeah, for 140, I don't know why you wouldn't take one in every army. I don't want to put them here because they'll get nerfed, but I don't know why you wouldn't take Snufflers in every single Gitz army, right? Because just for a body for 140, 12 wounds, 6 up, save, 5 up ward, right? Because they sniff their own shrooms. And then you can give a Moon Clan unit a 5 up ward, and on a 6 also +1 attack. Yeah. You take them every single time. Like, even in a Trog army, just take, like, you didn't need no other synergy, just take, like, 6 Snufflers and 20 Stabbas. I'm telling you, for 280 points, it's an insanely good investment. Alright? Okay, Spider Riders. Well, I guess we'll go in order, right? So let's do Snarlfang Riders first, okay? Alright, so they have this funky ability where they can move d6 in your opponent's turn, but you can't move in combat, so what's the point? Terrible combat, terrible durability, 130 points. Can go in, like, no battalions. No. No. Now, I'm being a bit harsh here, right? Because when I did my initial reactions, I was a bit more lukewarm. Like, I'm going to put this kind of all in B. But because I played a bunch of games, you'll kind of see the spreads happen now where I can really see what the good units are. Loon Smasher Fanatics, horrible if you're not taking Kragnos. If you're taking Kragnos, quite good. Okay. The reason is basically they need to come out of shooters or stabbers, and they need to be set up more than 9. And realistically, that means if you don't have 3 to 6 charge, they're just not going to work. Okay. So, I think they're the same. They're 140 points, which is quite nice. They're not like too expensive. But I don't think useful in every army. So 140. You'd only run them with Kragnos, and even then, I probably would just rather another Gobbapalooza. Spore Spider Fanatics, another unit that you're probably going to take in a Moon Clan heavy build. You probably take it every time, otherwise you'd leave it out of it. It's +1 attack for Moon Clan units. Doesn't really work well for squigs because it doesn't affect the companion weapons. Yeah, you can pre-game move, which actually can be useful sometimes. Like if you're playing focal points, the opponent doesn't have heaps of range, it can be useful to go take a flank objective. Yeah, I don't know. I think we put them probably here. I think this is a pretty solid unit if you're going a Moon Clan build. Otherwise, leave them at home. Okay, Moon Clan shooters, weird unit. Why are they weird? They don't have shooting combat. They're expensive, so they're 160 for 20. Okay, this is Rend 1 because you're taking Gobbapalooza to give them Rend. And then this is 3s and 4s because you're going priority target. So that's the cost of taking this unit, okay? However, if your opponent doesn't have a stacked General's Regiment, they will do no damage. They, at the moment, I think, sort of require any Scragrott for the redeploy attacks to dodge being tagged, and then also kind of get in a position where they can shoot. I also think they need bridge to get out of combat, and ultimately they're quite expensive. So I think that makes them not insanely useful. I'd probably put them down here. Okay. Stabbas, on the other hand, are fucking fantastic. These are great. The damage is like, if you can buff them, right? You can get them up to 4 attacks if you roll on the Snufflers and then Rend 1, and then wounding on 4s with the Loon Boss and 3s to hit. And at that point, they'll start to do some damage. But otherwise, it's just like 40 wounds on a 5-up save, 5-up ward from the Snufflers. That's -1 to hit potentially against infantry, or if you get the spell off. And that's just annoying. So yeah, I'd put them up here. I think they're super good. Yeah. Okay, Squig Herd. So when I did my initial review, I thought this unit was great. I now no longer think this unit is great. I think it's useful as a screen, and then because it's 100 points, right? And sometimes you get in a situation when that's all you have, especially with Trogs. But other than that, I just don't. They don't do enough damage, and bringing half a unit back from the shrine, it never really does much. You have to run them with Kragnos, I think, because they're too slow otherwise. D6 +3 is so bad. And the beast thing is such a problem. Like, it's so hard to actually get objectives with this unit. I don't know. I think we put them... I'd probably go all the way down here. I just played a bunch of games with them, and I wasn't really impressed with the Squig Herd compared to the other units. Okay, Loon Boss and Giant K-Squig. Initially, my impression was this unit sucks. I'm actually not sure about that anymore. I think it's actually quite a decent unit. So, you know how we were saying you take, like, the Loon Boss with the Stabbas? Well, the Loon Boss and Giant K-Squig, you take with the Boingrot Bounders. You give him Loon Touched and one of the other artifacts. Again, roll a D3. And his combat's quite good. And, importantly, he gives +1 to hit to the Boingrots when they fight, and the Boingrots I think are legitimately a great unit, so I think he's actually quite good. I'd probably put him here. I think for what he is, I believe he's 130 points. Just one moment. Let me double check that. Yeah, 130 points. I think that's pretty solid for what damage he does, and the ability to give +1 to hit to the Boingrots. And then also the ability to, you know, he moves like decently fast with fly. He does get shot at. I guess this is a negative, so he can get shot off. But I still like him as a unit. Okay, the Squig Hoppers. So what's interesting about this unit is I kind of think that this unit is... I would describe it as a screen. I actually think 20 hoppers, right, with the Snufflers is something that I've wanted to try, because it's resistant to a lot of the anti-infantry stuff in the meta, so your Dawn Riders and this sort of thing, and you can kind of just use it in a way where your opponent hits you and you get to do some damage back, and you just retreat and do mortal wounds in the movement phase, and that's how you just play this unit, as just a screen that just runs away, and you just stand on objectives with them. The reroll movement's actually quite relevant with these, right? This is the unit where it's relevant. The combat is fine, but I'm actually quite a fan of the squig hoppers. I'd put them probably over here. So again, I think you probably run a 20 block with a unit of snufflers, and this is like a screen. I don't think you need to invest the sub faction. You don't need to make them do +1 attack when they charge. You might if you want to, but I think the Moonclan Scrap is probably better. They don't do any damage really aside from the mortal wounds, but this mortal wounds thing can be quite a deterrent to your opponent charging you. And there's a way to do wounds without actually fighting someone in combat. So I think a fairly strong unit, but obviously a little bit strange, I would say. The Boingross. So this is a great unit. Okay, so it's 5-up save, which is worse than it used to be, and the combat is slightly worse than it used to be. But I don't think you care. I think you would rather this unit be cheaper and be used as just a counter charge sort of unit. I think a 10 block, which is 280 points, with a Loon Boss on Cave Squig can be a nice little counter punch unit. But I must admit, if I'm running Kragnos, I just do find that I'd rather have stuff that's a bit more survivable, rather than a counterpunch roll. And if they were a 4-up save, I don't think that would help. It's just the wounds department, right? Like, the Squig Hoppers are 170 for 1 less save, but quite a few more wounds, right? This is 10 wounds for 140 versus 20 wounds for 170. So they can't really occupy the screening cavalry route. The damage is a little bit unreliable as well, and kind of pulls a bunch of buffs from different places that are a bit disparate. Like, you can get the Squig Mortals on the charge, or you can get, what else can you get? Like, the Ren from the Gobbapalooza, and then the crit mortals from the Squig boss. Like, there's a bunch of just sort of different, and then +1 to hit from the K Squig. There's just a bunch of different disparate sources of buffs that are required to make this unit do the most damage, and the charge mortals are fairly weak. So I would say it's probably somewhere here next to the fanatics. I think these are roughly equivalent units. The big advantage of Boingross is being able to countercharge of your own screens and stuff, which is nice, but I don't think it's a reason enough for me to take them in a Kragnos style list. Trug. I played Trug a bunch of times. He's quite good in combat now. It's swingy, but he basically can get +2 attacks and also some Ren fairly easily, so he can be like a big hammer. My problem with just him is just durability, right? So it's 16 wounds, 4-up save, potentially +1 under the moon, and you can get a 5-up ward from himself, but it's not reliable. And yes, he heals D6, but that doesn't necessarily make a dent in 16 wounds, and he's 320 points. I just don't like it. I think even in Trog list, I would think about not running him. I don't know. I don't really like it. I don't think I'd go C, probably down here, but somewhere in the Scragrott sort of area. But I'm not a huge fan, no. Okay, Denko Trog Boss, I think, again, I'm not happy with this unit either. So 3-up, you can get +1 attack, but you have to be in combat, and he's so squishy. Like, insanely squishy. He has a 4-up spell ignore, yes, but that doesn't work against manifestations. His combat is whatever. Yes, he can carry artifacts, but for 220 points, I don't like him. I'd probably go, like, I would go here. I think this unit sucks. I would maybe even consider not taking him in a Trog build, is how bad this guy is. The Danko Troggoth is also bad. The combat is fine, but there's only one of them, and it's 10 wounds on the 4-up save. He has a 4-up spell ignore. Now, the Wade and Smash is interesting. Because you can use this to actually tag somebody, which is probably the best use for this unit, is as you go in and hit, and then move, potentially power through, and then Wade and Smash, and just tag something annoying. And in a Trog list, I think that justifies an inclusion. So I probably would put this as maybe slightly better. I think this is better than the Trogboss in a Trog list, but still not amazing. Fellwater Troggoths, I played with them in a range of lists. They're 180 points, and they're, I think, just a little bit too squishy. The Noxious Vomit thing is the same as it used to be, where you can turn off positive modifiers and give something -1 save. And it's a bit more reliable at doing 1 damage now, because instead of D3 damage, it's D3 at the front and 1 at the end, so a bit more reliable, has shooting combat. Their combat is quite weak, and they don't have the -1 to hit anymore, which makes them very, very squishy. But if you lose 3-2 comeback, and that is something that's quite nice, but overall, I'd probably put them down here in the B tier. Okay, Rockgut Troggoths. So, I said they were insane when I first reviewed the book, and on paper they did, but these guys just have one massive problem, which is Honor Guard, because getting -1 attack against them is just so bad, and -1 to hit as well is such a problem for this unit. So ultimately what they're more for is just being a tanky unit. I don't think you could run an army of Rockgut Troggoths and effectively assert yourself on the board. So I think just one block of 6 here and there in another build is a decent unit, but I don't think is an auto inclusion by any means at all. So I'd probably put them kind of in this A tier sort of region. I don't think that they're better than all these units, but I don't think that they're as insane as I thought they were because of that reason. Alright, Spider Riders are terrible. Alright, they're just so bad. I'm not even gonna discuss them. I mean, okay, yes, they have 2 control score, but the damage in combat and the durability is so bad. And I just don't have any, like, there's no redeeming quality. The thing with them that's so disappointing is there's no real way to buff them. So, like, you can't really get better than this profile in combat, which is just not good. So, yeah, they suck. The Web Spinner Shaman is way too expensive, so it's 140 points. And the Web Slingshot is just not that useful. I played it, and you don't need to move around to get manifestations off. Like, you really don't. Maybe it's useful with Kragnos to get in teleport range, but it's just because of Gobbapalooza, right? You don't need to worry about having a wizard that's far up. You already have this. So I don't really rate the Web Spinner Shaman. I don't think I have it. We'll use this thing here. Alright. Anyway, he's down there with the Rabble Rouser. Okay, the War Party of Ragnarok is terrible. But maybe it's one of the better versions of them. I think that's this one here. The Web Spinner Shaman and Ragnarok Spider. Alright, this one is the one that's actually quite good, I think. So the combat is actually quite decent with this guy. And the Monstrous Rampage is pretty awful, right? But +1 to cast, and kind of a part of the War Scroll that's not here is he will give the Scuttle Tide a 4 at board. And what this guy is useful for is taking Loon Touch to make him +2 to cast. Yes, he's a power level 1 wizard, but you can make him power level 2 with the Cauldron. And so what this guy is you sit the Cauldron next to him, and you're casting spells at +2 to cast, and you're getting Scuttle Tide off in your opponent's turn, and it's a 4 at board big base that's just really annoying. I quite like him. The bit that stops him from being really good is his battalions are awful. So I believe it's the case that you can only take Spiderfang stuff in his battalion. Yeah, which just makes him kind of just an extra drop. Which is unfortunate. If you could take Gobbapalooza in his battalion, I think he would be A tier, but otherwise I'd probably put him B tier. I believe it's one of these ones. Yeah. Alright. I think the Skitter Strand is awful, so that's going to go down here. And then I think the Flinger is actually okay. You can make something half move, which is actually quite decent in the game at the moment. And this -1 attack to companion weapons is also okay. And he's okay in combat, so I'd probably put him like here or something. Yeah. Alright, so that's all the War Scrolls. So I'll kind of do an overview of this now. So this is, just remember, this is Web Spinner, and we said this guy's the Rabble Rouser, okay? So I would say overall, it's quite strange tier list, right? Because in a way, your buff units are what's best. If you kind of look at this broken and S tier, you can kind of just construct an army around these 4 units. and that is kind of a whole army, and you just have to pick a hero, which is probably the Loon Boss. But I think there is some opportunity for subbing out the Stabbas for a unit of 20 hoppers, and I'll give this a go and report back and see how it goes. Because I think the hoppers can be quite good. And you would pair, in that case, the Squig Boss. So I think that's worth a try, and I'll let you guys know how that goes. Okay, so manifestations. So for this, we're going to go over to Age of Index. So let's first talk about the Gitz ones, okay? So we have the Cauldron here, and the Maelstrom, not Maelstrom, Moon, and the Scuttle Tide. Now, unfortunately, it's 4 spells, which is quite nice, right? And who could forget the Shroom? Okay, so the Moon. It casts out your Moon Aura 12 inches, which is great if you run Trogs, and actually situationally great if you run the Moon Clan, so I think quite good. Now it's kind of I'm just going to call them predatory endless spells. I don't know why they got rid of that word, right? But they have to set up more than 9. Mork's Mighty Mushroom is not. And it's got, like, quite a good effect. It's 18-inch range, right? And you just set it up, and this can do massive damage. The only problem is that they can redeploy before you do this. That's the problem with it. But if you do get the opportunities to get this mutating spores thing off, it's quite an annoying endless spell progressively, because it's in any shooting phase. So if you can put it in range of some immobile units and then start just doing a bunch of mortals, it's decent. Yeah, just a situational but great endless spell. Cauldron is amazing. You give it +1. You basically give a wizard +1. Okay, and you can do this immediately after summon it. So if you have a Cauldron in your list, you just cast it every time. On like your first spell, and it's great. I think it's almost enough of a reason to justify taking this whole lore, because I mean, even just standing next to a Gobbapalooza and giving your opponent the choice of getting rid of one of their spells to deny one of your spells, but it doesn't even really deny your spell, right? So you cast this and it's free. Okay, and then they have to get rid of a spell to do a banish, and then it goes to your turn, and then you can just cast it again and it's free, right? So it's just kind of denying your opponent a spell in a way without using a spell, and otherwise you end up with an extra spell every turn, and that's massive. So I think the Cauldron is amazing, and the Scuttle Tide, if you run that Arachnarok I spoke about, is amazing. Otherwise it's just okay. If you have the 4-up board, it's a super annoying body that's hard to deal with. I don't know if the 6 health is right. I might just check that. I had in my head it was 8. Maybe it is 6, but the 4-up board makes it massively annoying. We can check that over here. Okay, that does look like 6 health. Yeah, in that case, it's maybe less of a valid strategy to run the Skitterstrand. Yeah, in any case, I think sometimes useful. More often than not, it's just useful for blocking space. But I think the Gitz lore, mainly this Cauldron thing, is just amazing, so you probably take it for this, and the Moon is situationally great as well, and the other two can be good. But your spell lore is so good that you often don't need to rely on getting, more spells to cast through the manifestations. Obviously, we have Morbid. I don't think I need to talk about the Morbid lore. Well, obviously that's a great choice, but I think there are some other options as well. So this one, right, which is Pendulum, Cogs, and what's the other one? It's not Life Swarm. It's Pendulum, Cogs, and Swords, which I believe is called Aetherwrought Machines. So Pendulum, I think a lot of people miss this, but this has any movement phase. Now, it depends on how your TO has rolled. If you can move into combat with endless spell movement abilities, I think this is a really insane War Scroll. Not because it does damage. Do not get confused. This thing will almost never do any damage. But what you can do with it is basically set it up on your turn that it's at the front of your lines, and if your opponent wants to charge you, at the end of so they move, and then in any movement phase, you just move 8 with the Pendulum and tag them. So you can kind of set it up where you cast it on your turn, okay, can't move on your turn, but it goes to your opponent's turn. If they don't banish it, they might be in a situation where they could get tagged and not be able to charge, alright? So it's kind of a good defensive piece. Otherwise, if they maybe play around it so they don't get tagged, it actually can do some significant damage if they just leave it there the whole game. So, solid spell. Cogs is amazing, so you can either kind of put on +1 to hit, -1 to hit for all your wizards, Gobbapalooza. That means Gobbapalooza. Or reroll charge for everything, which is great. Alright, so you can imagine in the Kragnos Gobbapalooza kind of style list, it'd be pretty awesome. So that's another great option. And then swords is, I think, one of the better kind of damage solo operator manifestations, because you can kind of fly this around and start clearing off like some heroes, maybe something like that. It's a bit squishy, but you can do some big damage potentially. So I think that's a really solid option. Forbidden Power is, I think, probably another great option. So this is Bridge, Shards, Laukon, and what's the other one? Bridge, Shards, and then I know Horrorgust, who could forget? Okay, so Horrorgust is great. People leave this around for some reason, and it just does like really good shooting, really solid. Laukon is not so useful in this army, but more often than not, you just use it because it's 10 health with a 4-up save that just goes around and just kind of you can tag something with it and be annoying. Bridge, similar thing. Okay, can be great as a teleport, but otherwise just really annoying as 12 wounds with a 4-up save to block up board space. And Shards of Valor, 8 wounds with a 4-up save, which has basically the same purpose. Okay, so this one is kind of a board control angle. Yeah, so I think probably in order of strength. Okay, so if we're going to go order in strength, so it depends on how many Gobbapaloozas if you have. If you have like 5 Gobbapaloozas, I'd probably say that the Cogs one is maybe the best. If you have less, probably the Gitz one. Morbid's great too, but I just find with Morbid, there's games where you don't get the spells off because they're all high casting values. And sometimes they don't do much. Like, the Sun is the one that always does something, but unless you have bonuses to cast, it's hard to get off. The Gravetide, depending on the turn order, can just get instantly banished and not do anything. Yes, that will lose your opponent a spell, but it's I don't know. It's less good in Gitz than it is in other armies, is what I'd say about Gravetide. I think you more want to lean into stuff that's going to make your movement a bit more reliable, so stuff like the Bridge or the Laukon or the Cogs to reroll charges, or stuff that kind of can buff your armies in other ways, so the -1 to hit from the Cogs, or stuff like the extra cast from the Cauldron or the Moon Aura from the Gitz one. I think the Gitz one is very strong. I like the Cogs one as well, so those are sort of the ones I've gone with. I've also played with Forbidden Power, but I just find myself with Forbidden Power, like, am I going to cast a Bridge every turn to block up space? I don't know, probably not. So I think Forbidden Power is mainly useful to have a double access to teleport, and then most of the time you just get Horrorgust out, because Horrorgust is great. So that's where I'm at with Gitz. I am kind of surprised with how my thoughts are after playing the army for a little bit, because I thought the squigs would be much better, but now I'm kind of leaning more towards the Foot Moon Clan stuff is the really strong stuff in the book, which is surprising. But then again, the big change to Gitz, right, is essentially that we have kind of lost any sort of bravery issues, which is massive. I just want to quickly talk about the Shrine before I finish off here. Because I think what scares people away from Gitz a little bit is the fact that the Loon Shrine can be killed now. But I don't think it being able to be killed is the issue. I think more it's the fact that your opponent can get free 9-inch charges from it that makes me a little bit scared about where to put it on the board. So I tend to put it a little bit out of the way. The reason for that is if you put it too close to your army, you can end up in a situation where your opponent can come 9 inches behind you, and because you can set up ignoring the Loon Shrine, but you can charge it, you can be in a situation where you basically have like a pretty low charge to get into a unit, right? Because, okay, you can charge and then pile in 3 and then hit 3. So as long as you roll like a 4, right, you're going to be able to hit stuff. Because you can like charge 4 into the Shrine and then pile in and then hit the other thing you actually want to hit. So that's the problem with the Loon Shrine. Moonclan Lairs, the ability to get a unit back is definitely worth saving a CP for, especially if you have these units that round up well. So like Trogs, unit of 3 Trogs rounds up to 2, which is great. Getting 2 Trogs back's awesome, especially Fell Waters, but Rock Guts as well. And other than that, Gobbapalooza, amazing to get back. Big unit of Stabbas, great. 10 Hoppers is awesome because they're fast. Yeah. And I just think don't worry too much about this Moon Aura thing. If you set up too close to your army, you're going to make it so that charge problem is even more of an issue. Now, in terms of it dying, okay, yes, if you play a shooting army, hypothetically speaking, it's an issue. But if your opponent wants to spend a whole turn investing shooting a Loon Shrine, like, I think you're fine with that. Like, that's kind of getting you the same value as bringing back 1 or 2 units anyway. So, I think it's fine. They can shoot the Loon Shrine if they want, but I think in almost every game, they're better off not to and just leave it there. So, yeah, that's my Gitz review. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye for now.